Hey everyone, Andrew here, and today I'm going to do something a little different as a show that I've been thinking about and I've wanting to talk about a little bit. And it's like, there's a show that I watched that has something about it that I just find as a glaring flaw that kind of drags the whole thing down. I'm not someone that likes to do these kind of editorial things. I see these pop up all the time, especially with like new shows and stuff, where it's like, what is the secret meaning behind this? Or this show is not what you think it's about. And I'm like I don't care. I don't watch those. I don't particularly like those. I'm not doing that. This one is just something that it's like the more I thought about it, the more obvious that this problem was a problem came for me. And I know there's a bunch of other people that feel similar to the way I do about this, and I just kind of wanted to get it out there and give my thoughts on it. The show I will be talking about is Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. And this is a kids show made in France. It's distributed over here in America by Disney right now, although it was by Nickelodeon for a little bit. Basically season 3 has ended. I watched it all 3 seasons last summer, and I've been thinking about the show off and on since then. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about like the plot of the show and what the basic episodes are kind of like, what I think is good about the show, some of the things I've heard other people complain about, some of the things that I complain about, and then I'm going to talk about the one really big thing that drags the show down. And yeah, so the plot of Miraculous is we follow a 14-year-old girl named Marinette Dupain-Cheng. She is a half French, half Chinese girl living in Paris, and she goes to a prestigious school with a bunch of rich snob people for the most part. But, she's got her friends. She has this boy she has a crush on named Adrian, who is a male model, and the city occasionally is attacked by akumas, which are people who are possessed by an evil butterfly that turns them into monsters. Marinette will transform into her hero alter ego known as Ladybug, who has the power of luck and her lucky charm. Basically, she can summon a random item that will help solve the problem if she can figure out how to use it. And like when you first hear that as a superpower, you're like, well, that's a lot of power for one superhero to have. It's like you literally have the power of Deus Ex Machina. Like, oh no, I can't win this fight. Lucky charm, gun. And I've seen a couple of fan stuff that is like literally like her getting a gun and just using it. That actually ended up happening in the show once, where they did drop this giant gun in front of her, and she's like, oh, wait, they want me to use this. And she just takes the scope off of it and uses that. It's like, okay. But yeah, and she is aided in her quest to take down these Akumas by her sidekick, who is Chat Noir, or Cat Noir in the English. I apologize now, I'm going to be calling him Chat Noir for a good chunk of this, because that's the way I'm used to hearing it said. But yeah, Cat Noir is her ally, and he has the power to destroy anything with a single touch. Yeah, that's a really powerful thing to put in the hand of a 14-year-old. Oh, by the way, Chat Noir is also Adrian, the boy she has a crush on, but neither of them knows each other's secret identities. And Chat Noir has a huge crush on Ladybug, and doesn't know that Marinette has a crush on himself as Adrian, and yeah, it's a little convoluted, but it's what you get when you get these kind of love squares, I guess. It's more of a square. Basically, yeah, they fight Akumas, they break the thing that the butterfly is hiding in that gives them power. Ladybug uses her power to cure said butterfly from its evil, and then restores everything that the Akuma destroyed back to normal. And basically, yeah, that's kind of the whole show right there, is just that basic idea of, Marinette goes to school, something happens, she becomes Ladybug, Ladybug and Chat Noir fight the monster, Ladybug and Chat Noir defeat the monster, end of episode. And that's gonna be pretty much every episode. There's a couple little other ones, but like most of the time it's gonna be something along those lines. But the show has some stuff that works really well for it. For the start, is the animation quality is actually pretty good. It's very clean, very crisp. It's a CGI 3D effect to it. Like, the character designs are really good. The animation fight scenes are pretty good. The only time it kind of falls apart is in certain background shots. Like, there are times when they are in front of, like, the Louvre or the Eiffel Tower, and you just kind of look at it and you go, that's not what that looks like. There's nobody there, it's empty, it has this air of plastic fakeness to it. But that is a really, like, minor nitpick and just something that, like, it's hard to get across in a show with, like, this kind of budget for television. But yeah, we got a really good cast of characters. You have Marinette Dupain-Cheng, who is the superhero, but in the real world, she's extremely shy and clumsy. But she has this artistic side to her that makes her want to design clothes. Adrian has this really good balance of being, the goofy, weird character, but also kind of being the sympathetic, cool character. Very controlling family, very controlling life, and he uses Chat Noir as an escape to be free and do what he wants and be the person he really is versus what his father is trying to make him into. You got a great set of side characters that are all interesting and have their own things. Like, even each of the akumatized people is interesting, and I like the fact that we get some of them back over and over again and get to see them in different ways. You got Alia and Nino, who are the best friends. My personal favorite character, though, has to be Chloe, who starts off the show as the main bully. She's constantly picking on Marinette. She is old friends with Adrian. Basically, she was Adrian's only friend for most of his life, and she has a huge crush on Adrian and flirts with him all the time and hates Marinette. And for the first season, like, most of the people who become akumatized are a result of her, because if basically something happens that makes you angry or depressed or anything of an extreme emotional nature, risk you becoming akumatized. And Chloe was definitely the queen of causing that to happen. Probably still is, honestly. But as the show went on and you got into season 2, she ended up you find out that she has this huge desire to be like Ladybug. She's a big fan and wants to be a superhero and be this kind of good person. You also find out that her family life isn't as nice as it seems. I mean, her father is the mayor, but he's always working. The mother isn't around until, like, the very end of season 2. And when she shows up, she doesn't even call her daughter by her name. She always says a different name and ignores her. And there's a point where Chloe ends up gaining a Miraculous and gets a superpower. And she wants to do the right thing with it, but she immediately uses it for a personal gain type of thing of like, hey, look, I'm a superhero, and transforms in front of everybody, which is a giant no-no in the Miraculous universe. It basically means you forfeit your power, because Ladybug from the beginning of the show is flat out told, if you ever reveal who you really are, you will lose your power. Your power will be taken away from you. And that leads to some stuff that I'm going to talk about. But so Chloe, you have to give up the power. You told everyone you cannot have this, and she ends up giving up the power willingly. And she's like, I know this is meant for me. I know I am a good person. I'm going to prove to you that I deserve this. I'm going to prove to you that I am truly a superhero and that I belong as part of your team. And she does. She proves it. She goes out and becomes a better person. She doesn't bully people. She does the right thing. She becomes a better person and does everything to prove that she's worthy of it. And then the writers screw that up and destroy all of it at the end of season 3. And I will talk about that in a moment. But yeah, no, so there's some good characters. There's a good design to it. I like the fact that the akumatized people are not just monsters. They are kind of victims too. They're people who were tricked into agreeing to something that would lead to them doing something stupid, which is a very teenager thing to kind of happen. It's like, oh, I'm so mad. Oh, oops, I just destroyed half the school because I was so mad and I didn't think about the consequences. It's like, it really kind of ties into that whole middle school and teenager and, not knowing how to deal with the new emotions that are hitting you so hard. And you got some, and like, cool powers, cool story, cool, and, good design, all that stuff. But there are a few flaws, and there's some flaws that people complain about a lot that some of it I get. I even kind of understand some of it, but it's like, one of the biggest thing that you will hear complained about, especially from people who don't watch the show and don't have any interest in it or this and the other, is that why don't the characters know who each other are? How can no one figure out that Marinette is Ladybug when all she does is have a mask on? Doesn't even change her hair or anything. And the answer to that is magic. Duh. It's Sailor Moon rules. It's like you put on the mask is literally magic and warps the way people see you, so they don't necessarily see, Marinette with a mask. They see a different person. I mean, it's literally the same rules as Sailor Moon, except in this one they at least establish it's 100%, it's magic. There's a point where someone went to take off their masks in this, and it would not come off, and they're like, why can't I get this off? And it's like, it's magic, it's not coming off, unless we choose to let it come off. And I've always disliked when people bring this up. It's like, how does no one ever figure out that Clark Kent is Superman? I'm like, well, one, Clark Kent is a bumbling idiot who constantly is shown as being cowardice and running away. And then you have Superman, who is this godlike being who can do anything. Could be anywhere in the world at any time. It's like, unless you are specifically looking to go, okay, let's put these two pictures side by side, you're not necessarily going to put one and one together, even if you're around them often. I've always disliked that. It's like you would know. It's like, no, you wouldn't. If you're really smart, you might notice some stuff, but your brain would probably just go, there's no way that goofy, stupid Clark Kent is heroic, Superman. And that's sort of the kind of thing here, because there's one of the characters they love to complain about being an idiot the most is Adrien, that he cannot figure out that Marinette is Ladybug, that he can't figure out that Marinette has a crush on him, and it's like, it's because he's stupid and he doesn't figure this out. I'm like, no, he's put Ladybug on such a high pedestal that there's no woman in the world who can live up to that ideal, so he never even thinks about Marinette in that way or form. And yeah, the fact that Adrien hasn't figured out that Marinette has a crush on him, well, he's 14. And he was homeschooled his entire life. The only girl he's known his entire life is his mom, his dad's secretary, and Chloe. And Chloe hits on him all the time. It's like, of course he doesn't know that Marinette is flirting or interested in him. As far as he knows, he goes up to her and she just goes, hey, and hides, and says stupid things. And it's like, as far as he could tell, your first thing is not going to be, oh, she has a crush on me. Your first thought is going to be, what's wrong with her? Is she scared of me? Do I come off scary or dangerous or threatening? Maybe she hates me. It makes sense that he would not have these reactions. As someone whose last two girlfriends both flirted with him for a month before he even realized they were flirting with him, it's really, really easy to not pick up on some of these clues. I know for myself, it was like, they would say stuff to me, and my brain would just go, well, there's no way in hell they're flirting with me, because why would you do that? And to be fair, Adrien doesn't have that excuse, because you're Adrien Agreste, you're literally a model, of course girls are going to be flirting with you. But that's the thing, is if he is used to people reacting to him, it's that, where they're like, oh, you're so pretty, I want to touch you, type of thing. And having a girl who just goes and hides is not something he's used to, and he has no idea what it means. And it's just that thing of, they're so hard on Adrien for not figuring that stuff out, and it's like, he's a 14-year-old boy. Of course he's not the brightest bulb in the batch. Doesn't mean that he's dumb. Give him a break. Jeez Louise. No, the thing that bothers me is that Marinette has never figured out that Adrien is Cat Noir, because it's like hit or miss whether or not Adrien can put two and two together. But Marinette literally found out that Cat Noir has a pigeon allergy, and then the same episode found out that Adrien has a pigeon allergy, and just went, huh. And that's it. She didn't even try and put the math together. And, that episode right there 100% proved to me that Marinette does not care who Cat Noir really is. Doesn't care. Not even a little bit. Adrien wants to know who Ladybug is in real life. Marinette does not care. Chat Noir is barely a friend in her brain, I think. Like, I don't care who you really are, I don't need to know, I only care about Adrian Agreste. And that gets sort of frustrating because the entire reason I got interested in the show and the entire thing driving the show forward is will they, won't they of this relationship. Because, they're in love with each other, but they're in love with the opposite versions of each other and they don't know, and it's a lot, and they constantly do things to make sure that this couple can never get together. To the point where I am 100% certain that Marinette will never, ever willingly tell Adrian who she is. Or Chat. She won't tell either version of that who she really is, because she has been flat out taught that if Chat Noir knows who you really are, the world will end. There's a whole episode called Chat Blanca, which is all about a parallel timeline where Adrian found out that Ladybug was Marinette, and they had a relationship, and it's really nice until it isn't, and it leads to the end of the world. And it's like, the first half of that episode I loved, and the second half of that episode I hate with a huge passion, and it just pisses me off. Because, like I said, it literally sets it up that Marinette will never, ever tell him. Like, even if she found out who she really is, she would not tell him who she is. And that is frustrating. And to be fair, part of the problem I have, why this bothers me so much, is I watched this with less than a month after I watched all of 5 seasons of Merlin. And if you saw my review of Merlin versus Camelot, I grew to dislike Merlin a bit because of the secret identity thing, that they spent 5 seasons keeping his powers hidden from everybody. Like, every person that could have been helpful if they had just known the truth, everyone that could have, been more of use had they known things. No, they could never know. I have to keep the secret till the very final episode of the season, of the series. It's like, that was so frustrating for that show, and then I immediately watched this show, and it's the same freaking thing. And yeah, it's a lot, it's a bit much, and then we get to one of those things where it's like, okay, you set up these rules and these things where it's like, it's magic, people cannot figure this out no matter how hard they think about it, they're not going to do this. And then you had a character figure out who another character was within 5 seconds of them becoming a superhero. And that is the two best friends of Alia and Nino. So, both Alia and Nino eventually become superheroes, spoilers alert, and Nino becomes a superhero to save Alia when she's being captured by her sister who's been possessed by Nakuma. And Alia, within 5 seconds, knows that Nino is this new superhero. She immediately knows, and it's not at all surprised later when they find out together. He had no idea she was also a superhero. But it's a thing of like, okay, Alia, you figured out Nino was this superhero in 5 seconds. How have you not figured out that your best friend is that superhero you've been stalking all the time? Because Alia runs a blog all about Ladybug, and follows her, and takes pictures, and, interviews her, and gets to know her, and yet you haven't been able to piece a single bit of that back to your best friend Marinette? Really? Like, it's one or the other. It's like, if you had just stuck with it for the whole time and had no one ever figure it out, that would have been fine. But the fact that Alia was smart enough to get it for her boyfriend, but not smart enough to get it about any other character, is just frustrating. One of the things that does bother me, and I do think this is kind of a real anchor or weight on the show, is that they made it so that Marinette is the only person who can cure the butterflies and undo all of the chaos that happens. And that leads to a problem where they make Ladybug into this almost unstoppable, perfect kind of being. And that she is never in too far over her head. She always can figure out a way out of it. They made her into the Supergirl unstoppable force. It's like the same things that I complained about with like 2020's Mulan is the same stuff that I see here, where it's like, she doesn't have to struggle too hard. She doesn't fight that hard. She just can win without having to try too much. And I was like, okay, I get that to a certain extent, but then you take Cat Noir and you make him into a joke character, kind of. He's like, he spends more time playing the damsel in distress than he does saving the day and being a hero. He's a distraction. He's the thing to draw the attackers while Ladybug does all the good stuff. And it also leads to Marinette never being in real super danger because she can never be tricked, she can never be possessed, she can never be akumatized. Because if Marinette became akumatized, there would be nobody to stop her. Like, Chat Noir could maybe find the butterfly, but he couldn't reset the butterfly to bring back Ladybug to undo all the damage. So it would be like really, really difficult. So you've had moments where it's like, ooh, she might get possessed and they might have to figure out a way around this. And then she's like, no, I'm awesome. I'm fine. There was a point where she was getting bullied so hard by one of the other girls who was not Chloe. It was the character worse than Chloe, Lila. And she got to the point where she was so angry and depressed and mad that she almost got akumatized, and she saw the butterfly and went, nope, I'm happy now. Everything's good. And she was fine. And it went away. And it's like, really? That close. That would have been interesting. That would have been super cool to see how they would figure out how to get around that. But, they wrote themselves into a corner with that. And it's that thing of, like, there is a solution to this. There's a way that you could have done this that make it work. And there's actually a show that did that. The manga series known as Cardcaptor Sakura, which was then turned into a TV anime known as Cardcaptors. In Cardcaptor Sakura, Sakura is the only one who can capture the cards. She's the only one who can use the cards. She's the only one that the cards ever work for. She gets a rival in the manga named Lee, who also wants the cards and wants to capture them. But he can't do anything with them. He can't use them. They don't, he can't have them in any way, shape, or form. So he becomes the bodyguard and the distraction while Sakura solves the problem. But when they transferred it into Cardcaptors, the anime, they made it so that Lee could also use the cards. And that some of the cards would choose to side with Lee instead of going to Sakura. And thus, it took him from the bodyguard distraction character to the rival, to the equal, to the co-hero type of thing. And yes, they got to a point in that show where, it was still all Sakura and she had to do everything herself. But there was a point there where there was a good balance and Lee was just as important as Sakura was to the story. And that's why that one, I think, is just called Card Captors instead of Card Captor Sakura. You could have done something like that with Miraculous. Give Chat Noir his own kind of power that lets him do something of that nature. Instead, you gave him the power of destruction, which, I guess if you want, he could just kill the things, but this show will probably never do that. So one of the things that did bother me, and one of the things that kind of drove me up the wall, was you had Chloe, and she had redeemed herself, and she'd done all this work and become a better person, and at the end of season 3, they're like, she's like, oh, my parents are possessed. Ladybug, give me my Miraculous so we can stop my parents. And supposedly she got tricked. Reality was she chose not to choose Chloe. She chose to give someone else power because she was jealous of that someone else and wanted to get that person away from Adrian. Thus leading Chloe to feel like she was rejected, and then Chloe chose to side with evil and became a big villain again. The show undid a whole season's worth of work in one episode just to have Chloe be evil again. And it's like, really? She was making progress. She was becoming a better person. We were getting some depth from her, some life from her. And you had to turn her back into the villain for no reason. Honestly. Seriously. Jeez Louise. Don't get me wrong. The season finale of season 3 is mostly good. The way it chooses to end the love triangles aside, I think it's pretty good. But it's a thing of, like, I like Chloe. I think she's my favorite character. I think she has some depth and some stuff to really work on her. And I'm worried that they're just going to keep her evil because it's easier. And I'm especially worried because it's like I saw this thing that was talking about the upcoming seasons, and one of the things they mentioned was that they are going to have a new character who is going to gain the Miraculous that Chloe was using, and she's going to become a new miraculous superhero. And it's like, no, that is Chloe's. Chloe's earned that. She worked for it. She deserves a chance to earn it again. She's a good person. She's a good character. She has these good qualities about her. Don't give up on her just because you want to make her evil again. But that's just me. Like, I really hate how dirty they did her in that. I also kind of wish the show did a little bit more of the slice of life, these people just having fun with each other and going off and doing fun things. It wasn't just always school, school, fight, maybe one afternoon activity, fight, fight, fight. Like, but that, that's me, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more as, the show balances out a little bit. But we do have the one big problem with the show. And that big problem is that the show is aimed for the wrong age demographic. And some of you are like, what does that mean? But basically, what that means, I'm saying, is that the show is about middle schoolers dealing with middle schooler to adult-like problems. The way it's written is like for a second grader who it's just, there's bad and there's good, and I'm just going to solve all of my problems with friendship. It's very basic. It's very childish. It's like, oh, you were mean to me. Now I'm going to become evil. Like, I didn't do anything. I bumped into you. Don't just, like, it's very childish in its way it's set up and the way it's presented and the way things are built. And it's frustrating because it's a thing of like, this could be more. This could have a more maturity to it, a more quality to it. Instead, we get this very childish show that is aimed at 6-year-olds, but seems like it should be made for older. I understand. I am not the age demographic for this. I am a 30-something male. I am definitely not the person who should be this show is aimed for. I get that. And you know what? 5, 10, 15 years ago, I would have just brushed this off and been like, oh, well, it's a kid's show. It's not made for me. It's not. So, of course, I don't get it. And it doesn't work for me because I am an adult. However, we are currently in a cartoon renaissance and having these more adult and mature stories. And I would say this all started with probably Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I would even say more recently with Gravity Falls, which had a somewhat childish aesthetic to it, but you had these people dealing with these super dark, deep, intense things. And then you have shows like Steven Universe and Star vs. the Force of Evil, which start off very childish, but at the end are so mature that you can't even really kind of compare how it ends and how it begins. For example, Steven Universe starts with, oh, they're discontinuing my favorite ice cream. I'm sad, and I want to save as many of it as I can, to, oh, I'm dealing with the ramifications of sins my mother committed thousands of years ago, and how everything that she did destroyed all of these beings' lives, and everyone is screwed up, and I have to try and fix it and bring peace to the universe. Jeez Louise, like, those are completely different levels of television right there. And even Star vs. the Forces of Evil. The first episode of Star is a wild child who doesn't want to follow the rules, so we sent her to Earth to learn to be more in control, and so we don't have to deal with her. To, I'm trying to bring peace between monsters and humans, but the people that have magic are misusing magic to try to keep everyone in control, and I have to destroy magic to bring a chance for the world to kind of find a balance and live together. Again, dramatically different tones, but because the show grew with the audience and changed, it works. And we are in that. Like, even these shows, all these shows have more depth and more things going on for it. You have a show like She-Ra and the Princess of Power. And, like, that's based off a show from the 80s that was just made to sell toys to girls. Like, it was just a He-Man spinoff that was made to sell toys. And it had some decent ideas, but it didn't change the way television was made. But then you've got the current one, and you have this main character who has been raised by the evil people, is now on the side of good, and is trying to figure out the balance of how to win a war against an overwhelming force, and how to do the right thing, and how to live up to this power, and is this power even a good thing, or is it a bad thing? And the person that I care about the most is my most hated rival now, and it has so many more layers to it, and is honestly, to me, one of the best shows that I've seen in recent years. Even counting adult shows, it's just one of the best interesting shows. And that's amazing when you consider that it was, what it came from. And we even, more recently, we had a show called The Owl House. And The Owl House had more character growth and development and adultness added into it than all 3 seasons of Miraculous combined. Perfect example is to compare the 2 bully characters from that. Because you have Chloe from Miraculous, who was a bad person at the beginning, slowly started to become a good person, and then they dropped it and made her evil again. And then you have Amity, who starts off as the villain, who wants to, destroy Willow, who just wants to, succeed in the class, and she becomes a little bit more evil. And then as you get to know her, you see this change, and you start to see the good things about her and who she is. And by the end of season 1, she's not a villain at all anymore. She's not only a friend, she's almost a best friend. She's also like the main love interest by the end of the show. And that is such a great character arc and character development. And you got that from one show for one season in 15 episodes. That's amazing. Like, that, to me, Owl House is one of the best single seasons of a television show ever, and I highly recommend it. Because it's just, you see so much growth and so much development, and it just makes you super hyped for the new season, which comes out next month, and I'm hyped for it. I really want to see it. And the weird thing with Owl House that I just kind of want to point out, because it's the same thing, is that they're doing the same thing with Owl House that they do with Miraculous, which is, why is Luce such an idiot that she can't figure out that Amity has a crush on her? And it's like, she's 14, and the girl that was her bully, a couple episodes ago is now her friend. Of course, she's not going to be able to piece the pieces together. It doesn't mean she's dumb. It just means she's not used to having this relationship. But yeah, you see, it's circular. It's like anytime a character doesn't do something that the audience is like, oh yeah, no, I totally would have figured that out in 5 minutes. Like, no, you wouldn't. We're not all that smart, especially if we're not looking for the dang thing. But yeah, no, we're in a renaissance. We're in a time when shows are growing and changing and are becoming more mature. And then you have shows like Miraculous, where it's like there's certain shows you can tell from looking at them right off the bat, okay, this is never a show that's going to do that. Teen Titans Go is never going to become a more mature, engaging story. It's always going to be dumb and childish. And that's fine. But you have a show like Miraculous, which looks and is presented, both in its relationships and how the characters are treated, as this middle school coming of age kind of story. What you're showing me some of the time is this adult depth, interesting stuff, but I have to swim through all of this childish nonsense to get to the good in the show, and that's frustrating. And then, like I said, there's a lot of things to really like about this show, and one of the things that really worked out well for me in this show that grew on me that I was shocked at is I fell in love with the fan base of the show. Because this was the first thing that I've really, seen a lot of fan stuff. Because I used to look at some of the art and maybe a fan fiction or two, but I never really dove into any of that stuff. And then I came across this comic made by a fan called Tech Wars. It was about, what if Marinette found out that Adrian was Cat Noir first, and how would that happen, and how would she react? And they gave her a very mature kind of response of, you are only in love with the fake version of me. You don't know me as a real person. You would never love me as a real person. And, her going, I'm never going to tell you who I really am. and him having to figure out who she is, and he does, and it's really well written, really good comic. And I've read it like 5 or 6 times because I just enjoyed it so much and it was so interesting. And then I ended up finding a dub of it on YouTube, and I watched it and I loved it and it was really good. And then I watched another one, and then I watched another one, and now I've read like 70 or 80 of them, and it's like they're all okay. A lot of them are really good. Like, you get these really good ideas and these really good comic stories. And you get to see these characters be their age and their maturity, or even more mature, or sometimes less mature. You get moments where you can have some stupid things. Like, there's a really good one that was Marinette and Chat Noir hanging out, and they got drunk because the drinking age in France is 14. And Marinette just kind of admits, I'm in love with Adrienne Agreste, and Chat Noir is just going, that bastard stole my name! And doesn't piece it together. And it's like, that's perfect. That's more mature, but you also got a response that was actually dumber than it should have been. But it works because it's not playing up that the character's dumb, he's just not thinking clearly right now. And there's other really good little goofy things like that. Like I said, there's one where she uses her Miraculous and she gets a bazooka and she's just like starts firing the bazooka at the monsters. And they're like, aren't you going to reset everything? She's like, I'm not giving up my bazooka. No. It's mine. But you also get the in-depth, emotional things of like Marinette and how Marinette and Adrienne would find out about each other. And sometimes it's a goofy way, sometimes it's this adult way. Sometimes it's about dealing with the emotional weight of being a superhero and what that means, and having to face off against a force that is so daunting. It's like you get to have some of the extra childish stuff, but you get to have some of the adult stuff, and just, like I said, I fell in love with the fan stuff, and like the fan stuff is what I think of when I think of these characters now. I don't think about, Adrian being this sometimes goofy, sometimes straight guy. I think about him doing like the dumbest things, or saying like being the most cheesy person in the world, like where even Marinette's just going, I can't believe I had a crush on you. Why are you so dumb? Like, playing it up, but it works well, and that's very rare that this happens for me. There's only one other time where this kind of happened where I like the fan version more than the actual version that came out, and that would be Sword Art Online. I don't like Sword Art Online at all, but I love the abridged series that Something Witty did. Like, they took these characters and gave them some funny stuff to do, but you also get more character depth and more heart and more things that were missing from the show itself. And I do recommend that as well. But that's sort of what this did for me, is that I got to get to know these characters, and you get to see relationships that we don't get to really see. Like, there was so much stuff of Marinette and Chat Noir hanging out. Like, the majority of the stuff you're going to find is Marinette and Chat Noir hanging out. And I love it. I like that concept. It's so much more interesting to have Chat Noir being with the person he loves and not realizing it than it is, them in both their human form and both in their superhero forms. It's like just messing up the dynamics and changing them a bit really work. And it's stuff that I wish the show would do. I hope that we get some more maturity in the shows to come, because I know they are planning like 4 more seasons and a couple spin-offs and this, that, and the other, and I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that. Can we just age the show up just a tiny bit, just a little bit, so that I can stand to watch the episodes more than once? That's really it. This is kind of all I ask. I want, because like I've seen almost all 3 seasons. I know I'm missing 1 or 2, but I cannot find them, and I'm not going to watch every episode to try to find the 2 episodes I missed. It's not worth it for me right now. Like, I like the show. I really like the show. I love the fan art and the fan work and the fan community around the show. And I do recommend that for anyone who has watched the show. It's like, just go find some of these comic dubs, go find some of these art pieces, some of these music videos are just so well told and well put together. And yeah, that was sort of my thoughts on it. What do you all think? Do you like the way Miraculous is written? Do you think it is mature enough as it is? Do you think there's some other stuff that are bigger problems? Do you think there's some stuff they can work on? Let me know in the comments below. Um, so I wrote a fan fiction about Miraculous, and I'm not making this video to shill it. I really am. I am not. I've been thinking about this video since I watched the show. It's been kind of off and on in my brain, and the entire reason I wrote the fanfiction was I wanted to come up with a situation where Marinette would have to tell Adrian who she is. Because Marinette will never do it voluntarily. That she will have to do it if there's no choice whatsoever. And I ended up coming up with this concept, and I'm very proud of it. But I'm not making this video to be like, hey, read this. No, it's like, if you want to read it, if you have an interest in the show, or you have an interest in reading something that I wrote, please go. It's in the links below. If you have no interest, that's fine. I don't care. It's just something that, like, I don't write too much fan fiction, and I especially didn't intend to write this one. It was just stuck in my brain, and I had to get it out. And this helped. And let me add some depth and maturity to the show that I felt was missing too. So, yeah. What do you all think of the show? What do you think of the fanfiction? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all again soon. Bye!